Hello everyone. How's everyone doing? So amazing to see you all. It's day 3. Can you believe it already? Goodness, things seem to go very quickly, don't they? If you had to sum up the experience of this virtual masterclass so far using just one word, what would it be? Can you let me know in chat, please? Cool. I'm seeing, yeah, whoa, what the heck? Let me try that again. Inspiring, great, fantastic, awesome, educational and fun, helpful. Someone said gross, scary, mind-blowing, water. Thank you. Yeah, brilliant. Hey, enlightening. Oof, that is brilliant. Thank you for sharing, everyone. For me, if I had to choose one word to kind of pull everything together, it would be dehydration. Can you see how parched my lips are? Yeah. Now, what better way to kick off today, storytelling day, than with myself, of all people? Now, I'll come clean. I really don't like sharing stories like this, but Vin is pushing me to kind of, get out of my comfort zone. So here we go. Just letting you all know, my entire life to this point, I've always been afraid of basically asking women out. And it was essentially because I was afraid of rejection. Pretty common, I'm sure. But ultimately, it was because I didn't know how to communicate my value, my worth as a man. And this might sound crazy to you, but as a result, I didn't have a girlfriend until I was 31 years old. Yeah, and at that, well, by this point in my life, I was pretty successful in my career as a psychologist. I'd bought a car, I'd bought a house, but when I came home to that house, it was empty. I didn't have anyone to share difficult moments with. I didn't have anyone to share my wins with. Life was pretty lonely, if I'm being honest with you. And it wasn't until I truly learned how to communicate effectively that I was able to find the love of my life. And whoopsies, that is her. Her name is Fung, and that's our fur baby, AJ. And thank you for sending all of the love through. I really appreciate that. And funny thing actually, we got married a few years ago now, and you won't believe that. Well, some of you may believe this, but Vin actually crashed our honeymoon and sort of self-invited himself because, yeah, you'll notice in the background there's a beautiful picture of Mount Fuji, so there's that. And now we have little Ashi. He's nearly 1 year old now, so it all works out sometimes. It's nice. So for me, communication skills helped me to find the love of my life. And at this point, I want to ask you, what about you? What is your deep reason for being here? Why are you trying to develop and improve this skill set? Tell me in chat, please. Why are you here? What is communication going to do for you? Are you pursuing love like me? Was it about career progression? Is it about wielding more influence? It's beautiful. Better role model for your son, connect with people deeper, world domination. I love that one. Can't go past that, far out. Hopefully you'll have a nice spot for Vin and I somewhere, and hopefully water rations. Please, no one could be worse than Vin than that. But hey, that's brilliant. Thank you so much for sharing. Goodness, to show your true value, that's beautiful. Now, the reason why I'm telling you this, the reason why I'm talking about all of this, is because whether you're trying to find love, whether you're trying to find more success, wield more influence, career progression, world domination, pinky in the brain there, your ability to communicate defines that and helps you to achieve that. And here's the thing, just purely by being here in this virtual masterclass or by watching the recordings, by leaning into this process, you are already achieving that. You're doing it by learning, by applying yourself. You're all one step closer to achieving the exact things that you shared with us in the chat before. So, hey, I wanted to kick things off by just saying it's super inspirational for Vin and I to have people such as yourselves joining us from all over the world and being able to just go, hey, there are no nails, having fun and being able to just break out of that comfort zone. So, without further ado, you know how we play things by now. We're going to kick things off with a bit of an exercise. So, I'm just going to paste into chat right now the link to the exercises page. And in case you weren't sure what it looks like this when you bring it up. It's day 3. Yeah. Now, you're all going to be in groups of 5. And yes, you're already reading. It is charades. So you're going to be in groups of 4 to 5 roughly. Okay. And what we're going to do is we're going to change things up. We're going to do it in reverse alphabetical order this time, okay? Reverse alphabetical. So whoever's on the bottom, they're going first. They are participant 1, okay? Now, key things, of course, don't hit start on any videos, please. Do not do so. I know some of you are very eager. So what we're going to do, as soon as you start and join your room, no time for pleasantries again, I'm sorry. As soon as you join, person 1, that's the bottom of the list, yeah? They're going to wave to everyone and they're going to hit start on video 1. And what will happen is 2 words will appear on screen and it is their job to act out those words one at a time. Don't do both at the same time, just one word at a time. And remember the rules of charades. You can only use your body language, okay? So drinking water or whatever it is, yeah? Only body language. You cannot talk, you cannot make noises or anything, purely body language, okay? So the first person, they click the video, they act out the 2 words. If someone, well, you act out 1 word. If people get it right, you go to the next word. And if they get that right, fantastic, that's turn done. Second person turn starts, okay? And even if you don't get it, when you hit the video at the end, it will play a very loud and very annoying sound. It's an alarm, it goes off. It's just to let you know the turn is over. That's finished. We need to move on to the next person's turn, okay? We need to respect everyone's time. So that is it for the rules. Just reminding you in terms of the breakout room. Sure. So you've got to make sure your cameras are on, peoples. Vin was just going like, yeah. So make sure the camera is on. Make sure you start your camera, yeah? Because if you don't, it's going to be really, really hard. That's, yeah, you know, yeah, otherwise, yeah, I don't know if you can do it if someone is blind. But anyways, again, I'm going to start the breakouts. And just a reminder, have I got it up? Yes. So you should, if it doesn't send you out automatically, you'll have to find the join breakout room button. It's on the bottom. And if you can't see it, you have to find the more button on the bottom. And when you click that, it'll show you the join breakout room button. Okay. So all that being said and done, we are about to kick things off. Hope you all have fun. Sorry, I'm just playing around with that. That is it. So we're going to be back shortly. We're going to send you off. Make sure you have fun, break the nails, break out of your comfort zones and throw off those inhibitions. If you're just starting your day or if you're at the end of the day, have some fun with it. Yes, good luck. Good luck to everyone. Igor, sorry, I'm losing the ability to enunciate my words. We'll see you back shortly. Enjoy. Welcome back, welcome back. We had a lot of fun for all the people who came a little bit later, and that was their punishment. They had to kind of do it in the main room, which was hilarious fun. But for those of you who were in the breakouts, let us know, how did it go? What was it like? Was it fun? Hard. Okay, amazing, fun. Okay, cool, cool, cool. Connection, self-improvement, give Dan water. Interesting, I love it. Thank you for looking out for me. That's brilliant. That's awesome. Great group, lots of fun. Let me know, just out of curiosity, just tell me, yes or no in the chat. Did you manage to guess all of your things correct? Or did everyone guess your words correctly? Did you get it? Yes or no? Whoa, 80%? Damn, there's a lot of actors here, because that's pretty high. Wow, that is amazing. 76% yes. Goodness me. We got some pros. All righty, let me remove that. All right, brilliant. Well, hey, glad that you got to kick things off with a little bit of fun. All righty, and I think that's mostly it from me. And I'm going to throw over to Vin himself now. So hopefully he gives me a water ration for today. All right, we'll catch you soon. Enjoy today's session.
Okay, this whole thing with Dan and how I'm treating him terribly, it's got to stop. Like, it's not real. Everyone's treating as if it's real. I love this guy. Oh, you got to stop it. Free Dan, Rick. There's no freeing. He's already free. I'm gonna get like the police are gonna come and arrest me now as a result of this. This is absolute nonsense. But hey, listen. My first question to you all is, who got Vinh correctly? Good to see you all. Who got Vinh correctly? Tell me in the chat if you got Vinh correctly. Type yes, and if you didn't, type no. I want to get a percentage thing around me too. Who got Vinh? What? No, get out of here. 68, 60. Yeah, it's getting less now. It's getting less now. I didn't think so. Yeah, there you go. That's quite unbelievable. I really want to know how people act Vinh out. That's really interesting. All right, thanks, Dan. Let's swipe it away. But hey, great to see all your lovely faces. Thank you for joining us for day 3. I fundamentally believe day 3 is one of the most powerful days. Now, I wanted to start off by sharing with you one of my students, and I love showing this story of Rachel. And if you've seen it before, I do want to show you again, because I want to link this story to the mastery process that we're coming back to time and time and time again. Rachel came to me back in 2018, and her company sent her to me because they realized that Rachel is fantastic technically. So again, technically, she's like a 10 out of 10. However, her ability to communicate was around a 2 or a 3 out of 10. And as a result, people didn't perceive her to be brilliant, even though she was brilliant, because you're only as good as you can communicate. That's why as we communicate, we're able to amplify the best parts of who we are. Kind of like Dan. Dan's a great guy, right? He was sharing a story how he's trying to find a girlfriend for his first 31 years of life. He almost became the 40-year-old virgin. Isn't that funny? I thought it was hilarious. But again, Dan was a brilliant guy, but he wasn't able to communicate his value, and therefore he wasn't able to find Fung until he was 31. Side note, Fung's actually my cousin. So that's how Dan and I know each other. I'm actually quite certain he only married her to get closer to me. I know, what an arrogant monster this guy is. But here's the point of the story, again, is that as we learn how to communicate, we're able to then amplify the best parts of who we are. So Rachel's team, again, recognized Rachel was technically brilliant, and they wanted her to work on her communication skills. And I want to show you Rachel when she first came to me, okay? So have a look at this. This is Rachel.
I have a job that I love and a fulfilling work. I really have found that I'm giving back to the world. And I'm so thankful that I took that step, and now that $75 seems pretty well spent.
Punchline. Oh, no, yeah, good. And the punchline was the shoes, what, your life?
Oh, the shoes changed my life.
No, the shoes saved your life.
Yeah, okay.
Boom, big round of applause again. That was great. I loved it. You know, Rachel first came to me, it was wonderful. She was such a sweet person, and she always wasn't able to really communicate her value, even though she was absolutely brilliant, so technically capable as an engineer. She was an engineer. And then I taught Rachel the same process I've taught all of you. So I said, Rachel, as you've gone through the course, I just want you to focus on a few key things, just the 80-20, the 20% I want you to focus on. That's going to give you 80% of your results. So again, she just kind of kept going through this process with the simple foundations. And I want to show you now, Rachel, this was after about 3 to 4 months. Watch the change. This is unbelievable.
It was about 1.5 years after I graduated from college. I was working my first job as an engineer. I was asking myself questions like, what am I giving back to the world? What is it all about? What is the meaning of life? You know, totally normal questions that one asks oneself after you buy a pair of footwear. And yes, I am still wearing that same pair of dirty, stinky Chaco sandals. Starting to think that maybe that was a pretty good deal after all. Those shoes saved my life.
Big round of applause, yeah! Oh, I love this. I love this so much, you have no idea. And again, when you think about this process, what did Rachel work on? When we spent time together, I got Rachel to work on 3 things. The first thing was melody. So more melody in her voice. Second thing I said to Rachel was, Rachel, I think it's really important that you also increase your volume. And I just want you to just continue that process. And Rachel, the third thing that I want you to work on is hand gestures. That's it. I said, that's your 80-20. All you've got to work on is those 3 key areas, and it'll completely transform how you come across. And that's all she did. So she would try to use her hand gestures, for example, right? Or actually, she tried to use melody. She tried and applied it. And then when she reviewed and she reflected and she watched herself back, she kind of went, I'm not really pushing the boundaries. I can see that I'm still playing within my comfort zone. So then what she did was she planned to improve. She goes, I'm going to try to stretch my melody and my vocal variety more. And then she just kept doing that. And it got better and better and better and better. Same thing with volume, same thing with gestures. The first time she did it with her hand gestures, she goes, oh, I'm kind of being limited with my hand gestures. I'm going to try to do more advanced hand gestures, right? So she started playing with more advanced hand gestures, and that's what you all just did. What you all just did with charades is literally what we call advanced hand gestures. So if you find that you're sitting there and you're going through this mastery process, and then you kind of go, oh, actually, when I did that charades game, I found that it was really difficult for me to act out some of the things. What that means is, just like how with our vocabulary, we can have a small vocabulary, body language has a vocabulary too. It's called your gesture vocabulary. And if you've got a small gesture vocabulary, all you've got to do during the day while you're talking is, while you're talking, think to yourself, how can I act out what I'm saying? And then people always think, but Vin, when do I practice this? I'm not sure when to practice. Anytime you speak to another human being is an opportunity to practice. So if I was talking to all of you, I could have just said this morning, you know what? I woke up this morning, first thing I did was I opened up my laptop, and I remember just searching on how the price of Bitcoin was going, because something really exciting is happening today in the world of Bitcoin. So I was searching, and I found a beautiful article I want to share with you all today. All I did was laptop, searching things online, and I found something I'd love to share with you. Now, all of a sudden, I'm using my gestures to be able to communicate what I'm saying. So you're not limited to just placator, leveler, blamer, right? Computer. You're not just limited to that. Those are the foundational gestures. However, there are so many more intricate gestures. Like this to me is intricate. And again, once I learned that, now that becomes a part of my gesture vocabulary. And what is it? It's just me playing a game of charades, right? And again, back to the mastery formula is that's all that Rachel did. She focused on the 80-20. When you think about the people who are the GOATs in the world, greatest of all time, they tend to have foundations that are world-class. And then maybe they learn some of the trick shots. And you think about basketballers, even though I know nothing about basketball, but my friends love it. And they tell me Seth Curry, he's one of the best players in the league. They say that he's the best because he can do three-point shots, which is a certain way they shoot the ball from really far away. He can do that better than anybody else, which is one of the most foundational moves, one of the most foundational shots in basketball. But he does that better than anybody else. Therefore, he's one of the world's best. So instead of thinking to yourself and obsessing over, I want to learn all these little tricks and those flourishes, leave them for later. Let's focus on the 80-20. And just to close the loop with Rachel's story, I love this part. This part's my favorite. And my videographer, Craig, if you do watch the Q&As, you see him sitting in the back corner there. Craig always films me every time we go out and we fly and we do gigs for clients. And he caught this beautiful moment of me and Rachel. And I love sharing this.
Thank you for everything.
Oh, my pleasure.
Since the last workshop, I got a promotion.
High five! You got a promotion?
Yeah.
Oh, kick ass!
And so many people.
No, I love this. She got a promotion. How good's that? It's so wonderful to see, because she was able to communicate her value now. People could truly see how great she was. And she often says to me, she goes, Vin, it's so crazy that for years in my life, I only needed to change a couple of things. I didn't even need to change that much about myself. I just allowed myself to be more playful with my melody, allowed myself to just learn a new behavior of injecting more volume, and then I just started moving my hands like this more, and just put them out like this more. That was the only thing stopping me from showing the world how brilliant I am. I was like, yeah, it's actually not that complicated. It's not that complicated. So please, as we go through this class, I know it comes to a point where you think, oh, a bit of overwhelm. Don't let it overwhelm you. If you go through this experience, you find 3 to 5 things, and you continually take it through the mastery process, I promise you, that alone will transform how you come across. Continuing on with body language. Yesterday, we ended on facial expressions, but we kind of talked about advanced hand gestures here. So I just want to close that loop as well. If you still doubt the power of hand gestures, I do have to show you a sequence of videos. You see, the greatest form of accolade that you could give a keynote speaker, I do spend part of my year as a professional speaker, the greatest form of accolade is a standing ovation. And for the longest time in my career, I didn't get a standing ovation, right? And I felt like my keynote was pretty damn good. So I would ask my theater coaches, I said, Why am I not getting this standing ovation? How come? I crave for one. And they looked at my video, they said, talk's not bad. Not great, not bad. The reason you're not getting standing O's, Vin, is simply because you're not gesturing for them. And I was like, what? What do you mean not gesturing for them? I'd like you to watch these videos of me at the end of my talk very closely. Have a look at this. Good luck. Thank you very much indeed. Thank you, my friends. I appreciate you all. Thank you very much. Watch it again. Watch specifically my hands. Don't take your eyes off it. And again, if you really need to see it in slow motion. Yes. Oh, yes. Vin's a fraudulent bastard. But here's the thing that I did here, and thank you for the wonderful effects, Dan. But here's the thing that I want to share with you. If you watched me very closely, this is what I did. So what I do at the end of my talk is I take a bow, and then as I look up, I lock eyes with the person in the front row. Very specific. You've got to take that note. I lock eyes with the person in the front row as I look up, and I just do this. And then the person in the front row just kind of sees me do that, and they kind of go, oh. And then they stand because they can't, it's so influential. And the reason you do it to the person in the front row is then so every single other person behind them sees it and also feels the pressure to stand. It's how you execute a standing ovation. Now, of course, please understand that your talk has to be half decent, otherwise it just won't work. You do this and like, yeah, nah, mate, nah. That's the power of hand gestures. I can use a simple gesture like this. I can influence a room filled with 5, 6, 7,000 people. Imagine you start to use hand gestures more in your everyday life. If you want to expand your gesture vocabulary, every conversation you have today, think, how can I use my hands to describe what I'm saying? As opposed to just talking without using my hand gestures. After a while, you realize that, my goodness, it's actually hard to watch Vin not move his hands. It drives me a little bit crazy, right? Because now you're used to someone being visually dynamic, as opposed to nothing at all, right? Next. So yesterday, posture, hand gestures, facial expressions. Now we move on to movement. Before we movement, Dan is waving me down from the corners over there. I'd like to give you guys the Slido link for today. So let's bring up the Slido link. Please, if you want to ask me questions, it's on that Slido link. You can use the QR code, or Dan will also leave that link in the chat. And I can see Chris already, who said hand gestures don't really work with video meetings. Chris, absolutely. Please make sure you check the Q&A video for day 2, because in that I cover how to use hand gestures on camera. And simple note, position the camera further away. There's a study of distances known as proxemics, which I run through in the Q&A for day 2. Check that out. I give you the optimal position for the camera, and then that allows you to be able to gesture. Because, interesting note, the more of your screen you take up virtually, the more presence you have online. That's how you increase your level of presence online. Otherwise, what most people do is, first of all, they appear way too close to the camera. No one wants to be this close to me. So what you want to do is you want to appear in what they call the social space, which again, more info, full run through in the day 2 Q&A. Don't go there now though. Don't go there now. Now, when it comes to movement, let's dissect this a little bit. What do you think most people do? What do you think people do when, and thanks for the thumbs up, Chris. What do you think most people do when they don't know what to do with movement? Let me tell you the classics. I've been teaching this for years. The first one is when people don't know what to do with movement, they do the classic back and forward. It's the classic back and forth like this. And usually they pair that with the hand prayer position. And when they do their presentations, you see them do what's known as the waltz. This is the waltz, and sometimes you see the waltz with the hands behind the back, and they're talking like this. And for some more kind of people who suffer from this, sometimes they do the classic crossing of the legs, okay? And there's a bit of the crossing of the legs, and then every now and then it's, crossing of the other side, and then every now and then slight loss of balance, and you see this, because again, they don't know what to do with movement. Another classic one you see with movement, when people don't know what to do with movement, is the classic prowling. And prowling is when they just, for no reason, just kind of, really no reason, just keep walking back and forth as if they're prowling, okay? So these forms of movement are non-functional. They don't serve any purpose. So if you do it, and it becomes default, when something becomes default, it becomes rather non-functional. So let's learn the reasons for movement. So as we begin movement, There are multiple reasons for movement, and I'll demonstrate for you as I switch back to the other camera again to demonstrate effectively. Back we go. So write these down. The first functional form of movement is to illustrate time. So just write that down. You can use movement to illustrate a change in time. So time. Just write this next part down. Don't question me just yet. Just write it down. When you're standing on stage or you're standing in front of an office presenting to a group of 3 or 4 people, regardless of the audience size, but when you're standing opposite people, if you're using movement to reference time, write this next bit down. Your right is the past. Your left is the future. Okay, just write that down. Now, the reason for this is because when you're standing opposite people, you have to reverse the time, right? You have to reverse what left and right means. Because watch what happens. Just watch what happens here. If I go to my left to indicate the past, which feels more natural to me. So if I do this, if I go, just come back 10 years with me. 10 years ago, I was thinking if I should move to America or not. Notice how that feels a bit weird to you though. It feels good for me, but it feels weird to you. Because we're used to watching videos. Videos move from here all the way to here, right? And because we're all online now, we watch videos, we see that as an indicator of time. So what you have to do is, watch what happens if I use my right as being the past. And I say, you know what, just come back 10 years ago with me. 10 years ago, I was making the decision, should I move to the US? Do you notice how that feels better? These are the little 1%ers that if you get right, people say things like, oh, this person seems like a natural. Otherwise, when we get these little 1%ers wrong, it just kind of creates interference in people's brain. And they kind of go, wait, what? Wait, why are you walking into the past when you're talking about the future? Why are you walking into the future when you're talking about the past? And that little bit of 1% of interference can cause miscommunication if you stack enough of them up. So again, when you're opposite the audience, when you refer to the past, that's always on your right. Refer to the future, it's on your left. This is one of the reasons we can use time. Well, sorry, this is one of the reasons we can use movement. So again, if you're sharing a story and there's a time references, 4 years ago, I was making that decision. 10 years ago, I was making that decision. And then if we move forward into the future, I moved to the US in 2017. So all of a sudden, this movement makes sense now. Second reason for movement, note this down. It's to show sequence. You could use it to show sequence. When you're talking about a topic that is complicated and maybe there are 3 parts to it, you can use it to show sequence. And sequence again grows from your right to your left. So you can do it like this. You can say, hey everyone, look, the first thing we're going to speak about is we're going to talk about organic marketing, right? So how we can do organic social media marketing. And then the second thing we're going to talk about, moving over to show sequence, the second thing we're going to talk about is paid marketing. How we can use paid marketing to acquire more leads. And then look, the third thing we're going to start to talk about is we're going to talk about the importance of building a mailing list. Okay? So we're going to talk about these 3 things today. And let's begin today with organic marketing. So by doing this, you're visually chunking the information down to create visual clarity. And that enhances the clarity. It makes it easier for people to process what you're saying. And all of a sudden now you've created anchors wherever you're standing. It could be in a meeting room. You've got enough space. You can have 3 spots. So that means that any time during my presentation, if someone's got a question about, say, email marketing, I'll be like, oh, do you remember when we spoke about email marketing? The key thing that's critical here is, and you can keep talking. It just creates visual clarity. Next, in movement. Movement can also be used to show a change in location. A change in location. Note that down. So while you're talking, while you're talking about, oh, I was living in the US a few years ago, and while I was in the US, I kind of yearned for home. I really wanted to come back home to Adelaide, my hometown. And you know what? At the end of 2019, I made that really difficult decision. People see it as a sunk cost, but I left the US and I went back home to Australia. And I'm happier than I've ever been. All of a sudden now, I was able to move to create visual engagement, but it was done with purpose, right? I was able to show it USA was here and Australia was here. You can use it to show a change in location. The other thing you can use movement for as well is you can use movement to show growth. The next one is growth. Started on the bottom, now we're here. And I see people use growth wrong all the time. And it's because you're trying to do it natural to you. And if you're trying to do it natural to you, which is wrong, things grow for you from left to right. But when you do this, it looks like we're going down. It looks like we're going into the past. It looks like we're going into the negative for everybody else. Whereas, no. You want to say, look, I remember when we first started, gosh, you still remember the sales numbers? But gosh, every year on year, we've been growing unbelievably. Now you can use movement to show growth. And you grow from your right to your left. And the final thing you can use movement for, and we'll talk about it more in storytelling, just write it down for now, is you can use movement to bring characters to life in your story. To bring characters to life. And we'll deep dive into that in storytelling. Final extra one I'm going to give you for movement. And this is only relevant if you're speaking to a fairly large audience. If you're speaking to an audience larger than, say, 20, 30 people, then what you want to do is you also want to use movement to connect with different parts of the audience. So I'm going to move over here to connect with all of you. Then I want to come back over here and I'm going to connect with all of you. And then maybe I'll come to the center and I'll connect with you too. Now here's the biggest rule in movement you have to write down. Make sure you highlight this one, circle it, put a star next to it. Only move with purpose. Only move with purpose. Just like when you speak, there can be auditory clutter. And auditory clutter is when someone says, okay, like, do you know what I mean? That's auditory clutter. That clutters the message. There's also such thing as visual clutter. And visual clutter is all the unnecessary movements. Visual clutter can start to make things seem more unclear. Visual clutter can make you feel less confident. Whereas when you move with purpose, in your body, you're going to feel more confident. And if you start to feel more confident, you'll start to sound more confident. I'll give you an example of this in play where it doesn't go well. I'm going to share with you a video of one of my students. I'm so lucky my students allow me to use these videos to demonstrate for you things going wrong and then things going right. This here is one of my students named Bipul. And if you watch this video, while he's sharing the story, he's moving around with no real meaning. There's no purpose to his movement. And if you start to really pay attention to this, because you can see the unseen now. Most people wouldn't see any of this, but you now can. You'll start to see these movements seem unsure. And then if you start to move in a really unsure way, it makes you sound really unsure. See if you notice it. Here we go.
So I looked up swimming lessons. I went to the classes diligently. There were little kids in the pool with me, and I was swimming next to them, and I was feeling so embarrassed. But then that voice in me kept saying, courage, courage, courage. And and over time, I started enjoying the water again. And I started doing all the water activities which I would have missed had I not shown the courage. So the point of my story is, oftentimes in your life, you will come at a fork where you have to make a decision.
You see that? Again, it didn't seem really certain in what he was saying. And if we immediately contrast this with him not moving now, listen to the difference in his voice.
So the point of my story is, you will always have a fork in your life where you have the easy path or the difficult path, which may seem difficult at first, but not really. So which one are you going to choose? Stay in fear the rest of your life, not enjoy the world, what the world has to offer, or do something about it. Take that step, show some action, and then enjoy life to the fullest.
Big round of applause. Oh, do you see the difference? See the difference? When there's no reason to move, don't move. And all of a sudden, when he didn't move, there was so much power in what he was saying. Because not only did he sound more confident, when you're looking at him, visually, he looked like he believed in the message more. Whereas the first one is like, he's talking about courage and everything, but the way he was walking just kind of showed like he didn't even know where it was going. That's the power of movement. And that's why I wanted to highlight, only move with purpose. This is the 80-20 for movement. Don't overcomplicate it. Master that. Next, we're moving on to eye contact. Number 5, eye contact. We'll talk about the virtual rules for eye contact first of all, because this one kind of came up during yesterday's Q&A and I thought I'd clarify this here as well. When you're communicating online virtually with people, the most important piece of body language is actually your eye contact. It is. And we live in a very unusual world now where, look what happens. This is what most people do. Most people do not look at the camera. Most people look at themselves. So this is me looking at myself. So just imagine for a second, I was presenting like this to you for the next two to 3 days. You feel way less connected to me as compared to if I did this. Now, again, if you've got a webcam, you have this wonderful little tool you can buy, and it's called a plexicam. And a plexicam is just a little piece of plastic that allows you to put your webcam in the middle of your screen so that you can have all of the participants or maybe the person right behind you. So I've just got one of those, except for a bigger camera, and I've got all of you, I can see all of you all around me right now. That allows me to look into the camera but still see all of you. So what that does is when I look into the camera, I give all of you my eyes so you feel more connected to me. And then I get the plexicam because then I'm able to see all of you behind me so I feel more connected to you. It's a new behavior we must learn if we want to become more effective at virtual communication. Here's the rule that I follow though for virtual communication and eye contact. When I'm speaking, if you pay attention, I'm looking into the camera 95% of the time, 100% of the time. I don't look anywhere else. I look directly into the lens because I know where you're looking. You're looking directly into my eyes, right? So what I want you to now build that habit of is just when you're virtually communicating, look into the lens, give other people your eyes. Now, when I'm listening to other people speak, I still look at the camera because while they're talking, I still want them to feel connected to me. So I give them my eyes 80% of the time, 70% of the time. And the other 20 to 30% of the time, I just catch small glances at them just to make sure that I'm following along and not missing any virtual cues. However, if I've got the plexicam, I can give them my eyes the entire time and I can see them behind me. So I can notice visual cues that if they kind of look a little bit unsure, I can be like, hey, you seem unsure about that. Do you want to tell me more about why you feel a little unsure? Right? So again, these are new skills we have to learn. There is a little bit of plastic you have to buy and it's called a plexicam. That's all I'm going to say for virtual eye contact. Now let's talk about eye contact in person. In person, eye contact, 80-20. This is the 20% that will give you 80% of the results. I'm first going to give you the list of things that you should not do. Should not do. Okay, so this is the list of things you should not do. Number 1, don't dart, meaning don't look at people too quickly. Don't do this. Hi everyone, it's good to see you. Thanks for being here. I really appreciate you taking the time, the 3 of you, to spend time with me. If you look too quickly, it looks like you're not trustworthy. Okay, so please don't look too quickly. Second thing to not do, don't look for too long. Okay, because if you've got a room full of 3 people and you walk in and you only look at James, James is going to feel really weirded out after about 10 seconds. Don't just look at one person, okay? You want to give, again, I'm not going to give you the to-dos yet. Don't look for too long. Third thing, don't do the classic thing that everybody does when they're at the lectern. When everybody's at the lectern, they scan. This is the classic scanning move. You've got your lectern, so they do this. They go, good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for being here. I really appreciate all of you attending. And the first thing I want to bring up today as we begin, everyone knows you're not looking at them. Everyone, just don't scan. Don't scan. Next one's really weird. Really weird. Don't follow the same sequence over and over and over and over again. Meaning, notice how it starts to look weird after a while. When you start to speak to people and then you just follow the same sequence after a few moments, when you first started, it's totally fine. But then after about a minute, if you start to follow the exact same sequence and you don't do anything different, then all of a sudden now, this kind of seems a little bit strange and it starts to distract people from the message. They kind of go, wait, is Vinh a sprinkler? Because it's oddly consistent, and then it starts to play on people's minds, right? So again, don't look sequentially. Don't do this. Another one that's a very common public speaking error. I don't know who said this. Some people say that, oh, if you feel nervous, it's okay. Just look over people's heads. No, don't look over people's heads. They can tell. Look what happens if I just look 2 centimeters above my camera. Can you tell I'm looking 2 centimeters above my camera? You absolutely can. Do you see the difference? So don't look over people's heads. No, don't do that. These are the list of things to not do. The list of things to do, very simple, very small list. Speak to one person and finish a thought, which takes about 3 to 5 seconds. So you look to one person, you finish a thought, and you say, can you really grasp the thing I'm trying to share here? Lovely. Next rule. So finish a thought per person. Next thing you do is you give good coverage while being random. That's it. That's all you got to do. One person, one thought, give good coverage, but you want to be completely random. And that's how you do it. Simple as that. No need to overcomplicate it. The only other thing I'll say with eye contact is if you're speaking to large groups, and it is larger than 20 or 30, giving good coverage just means that you're looking at different sections of the room. So you could just look to this section. It looks like you're looking at a group of maybe 10 plus people. So it allows you just to give good coverage. Boom, boom, boom. Okay? And if you pair one more thing with good eye contact, this makes people feel deeply connected to you. Another big error people make in language, which you can correct and add eye contact to that, is use singular language. Often what people do when they're communicating to many is they say, hi everyone, good to see you all. Hey folks. Instead of using plurals, use singular language. Hey, it's great to see you. Even though there are lots of people in the room, it's so good to see you. Thank you for being here. Right? I'm so glad that you made it today. You know, one of the key things I'm so glad you're here for, so I'm using singular language. I'm speaking to many as I speak to one. So when people leave, they felt like I spoke to them. No one's going to be there and be like, hang on, why is Vinh using singular language? There are many of us here. Why is he not saying you all? No, it just goes straight past over their heads. And then when they leave, they feel deeply connected to you, even though you were speaking to many, because you were speaking to many as you were speaking to one. Pair those two together, especially with good eye contact. They're like, he's talking to me. Woo. It's a very powerful hack. Recap. That's all it has to be. Doesn't need to be more complicated. 80-20. Now, we're going to bring it all back to the beginning. Right in the beginning, I spoke about the diamond of influence. And the diamond of influence, I believe, is right here. We now understand that we can influence the way people think, feel, behave, and the things that people believe if we use our voice a certain way. But instead of just using our voice a certain way, if we also learn how to use our body language, another pillar of influence, if we use them both combined, then we're going to be able to influence people even more for the good, not evil. So all of a sudden, now you understand that if you compound these things together, you're able to achieve greater influence. But why stop at 2 pillars when there are actually 4? That's why we're diving into the next component. The next component is S.T, which is storytelling. That's what we're about to dive into now. Storytelling. Now, I just want to say, this is hands down, I believe, the most powerful communication device. This skill, the greatest communicators have it. The people who have the most reach online, the people who have built the most successful businesses, the people who have been able to have the most impact in this world are impeccable storytellers. You can use it for your life too. It's a skill and it's not difficult. It's not difficult. We want to learn it in the most wholesome way possible though. So what I want to do is I want to explain to you, there are certain chemicals that are released during storytelling. The first chemical that's released during storytelling, start taking notes. This is the important one. If you walk away from this entire experience and you just got this, notice how I decrease volume to highlight a point, you're seeing the invisible. If you just got this, it's going to transform the way you communicate moving forward. This alone. Dopamine. Lean into the experience you're already here. Stay focused, stay locked in. When you share a story that is it causes people to become very curious. It's very high stakes. It's very intense, right? When you share a story in that manner, it releases dopamine. Okay? That's the kind of category of stories. High stakes stories, intense stories, stories that make people go, oh, what's going to happen next, right? Those kind of stories release dopamine. Now, when dopamine is released, this is what happens to people. It increases their level of focus. Next, increases their level of creativity. Oh, no, sorry, not creativity. Increases their memory retention. So MR is memory retention. Next, it increases their level of motivation. And finally, it increases their attention, their level of attention. It's very powerful when you can use dopamine well. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to share with you a story that's going to evoke dopamine from you, with or without your permission. And I'm going to play for you a video simply because I want you to also hear the audience reactions, right? I want to play for you a live scenario where there is an audience, so that storytelling is a little more natural, right? So I'm going to play that video for you. This is going to evoke dopamine with or without your permission. Here we go. I remember the first time I went to a vocal coach. And I remember, it's for those of you in Adelaide, there's a place called the Music Corner in Salisbury. There's this little dingy old store in the middle of the most dodgiest place you've ever seen. And I walk in, and I wanted vocal classes. And they said, go to the back and see Miss Stanley. So I see her in the room, tiny little room with a big piano. And I see a chair in the corner, her chair, and she's sitting there. And I walk in and I open the door. And I'm like, hello. She says nothing to me. And then she just goes, she's sitting in the piano. She goes, sit down, young man. So I go, okay. It's a bit awkward. So I sit down. And I'm just waiting, and she doesn't say anything. It's just this moment of pause, and it's fascinating because then she lifts one hand up dramatically, and she starts playing one key. Can I just quickly, okay. Just, you know. Super weird, okay? And then at this point, I'm creeped out. And then she turns around after a moment. She goes, how do you feel, young man? And I was sitting there, I thought to myself, a little bit scared, but nothing other than that, just a bit of fear. And then she just goes, good. I was like, what the hell is this? You know, and then after that, she goes, listen. And then she plays this. Gorgeous piece. It took a moment and I soaked it in, and she turns around again, and this time she faces me and she says, how do you feel, young man? I said, still a little bit scared from before, but now I also feel drama, like losing a loved one almost, like intense love for someone that you feel. And she goes, good. You see, son, often people in life, they go through their entire lives speaking like this, with just one key. I'm about to teach you, young man, how to speak like this. She was $50 for 30 minutes in the ghetto, the most expensive vocal teacher. I gave her all my money. I did all the classes I could with her. And I share this with you because that was the moment I realized that I had access to an incredible instrument in that moment. But for the 4 years of my life, I'd been playing the damn keys like this my whole life. And that's when I committed to learning how to play my entire instrument. Okay, you see, very dramatic. She was a very dramatic teacher, and I love her for it. But the powerful thing in that is, you can see how I use the story to better evoke different chemicals from you. And we're going to continue this process. We're going to go through all 4. There are 4, okay? The next one we're going to go through, the second one, is called oxytocin. Oxytocin. Now, oxytocin, very different from dopamine. This category of stories is when you share a story that is a little more vulnerable in nature. It causes people to release oxytocin. Right? And again, with or without their permission, it just happens when you start to engage in a little vulnerability. So when you engage in vulnerability, it gets people to release oxytocin. This is what happens. People feel more generous towards you. People, they feel more generous. So it increases generosity. It also makes them feel more bonding. So it increases the level of bonding. It also increases the level of trust. And more than this, it increases empathy. Wonderful. It's a very wonderful human chemical. And we experience these beautiful human moments when we share a story that's a little more vulnerable in nature. So I want to share with you a story. This is one that I keep very close to my heart. And I always like to share this story because it keeps a certain memory alive for me. So I'd love to be able to share with you something very important to me. And this one is going to evoke a little oxytocin from you. How many of you here are close to your grandparents? Yeah, me too. I am. That's my grandma. I can't believe how small she is. I swear she just shrinks when she gets older. She is one of the most important people to me in my life. And at the age of 86, she was diagnosed with lymphoma cancer. And I remember this moment so vividly in my mind where we're in the doctor's practice, the oncologist, and the whole family was there. There was about 18 people in the room. And I was sitting there, I'm the oldest grandson, and I was sitting there, or the oldest grandchild, and I was there with my mum, and then me, and all my aunties, uncles, cousins. And Grandma has been feeling stomach pains. And we're about to hear the result. And the doctor says, your grandmother has lymphoma cancer in the stomach. And at her age of 86, there's no point in doing chemotherapy or radiation therapy. It'll probably kill her. And my grandma's sitting over here, you know, and she's a savage. So she's like, what's he saying? In Vietnamese, she goes, ông nói gì? Ông nói gì? Means, what's he saying? Tell me. And then I said to Mum, I go, Mum, like, should we tell Grandma the truth, or should we just tell her it's a stomachache and some diarrhea and she'll survive? It's okay. Like, what do we do? Do we do the truth? And Mum's like, of course, tell Grandma the truth. She can handle it. So we tell my grandma that she's got lymphoma cancer, that there's no point in doing it. And she immediately goes, no, give me the damn medicine. Is this man crazy? My grandma did the radiation therapy. She did the chemotherapy. She was so sick when she did it. My grandma lived to 101. And the week before my grandmother passed, we all took time off work to be with her every day. And there was this one moment that I was able to capture with my grandmother that I want to share with you. And I'll tell you why afterwards. And when you hear me reference the word red packet, what I mean by red packet is in the Asian culture, when you say something sweet to your elders during Chinese New Year, they give you a red packet and it's filled with cash. It's lovely. So when you see it, I'm talking in Vietnamese, but you can read on the bottom what I'm saying to her. Thấy không? Thấy không? Con mở mắt lên coi. Mở mắt lên coi. Giờ có chút xíu theo anh nó lại nè. Vợ con lại nè. Hả? Tỉnh lại coi. Tỉnh lại coi, theo anh nó lại đó. Theo anh nó lại đó. Giờ mà con nói má nghe nè. Tụi con muốn nói lần cho má biết ha. Tụi con nhà cũng thương má hết á. Ha, má nghe không? Biết phải không? Là coi như má làm bà ngoại rất là tốt. Má sanh mấy ý đồ, bây giờ má ý lớn lên thành người tốt. Thiệt, cũng thành người tốt. Bây giờ con cũng lớn lên làm cháu của má, cháu ngoại của má. Mà con cũng thành người tốt nữa. Cũng nhờ má đó. Biết không?
Nhớ không? Xin nhờ phải không? Tốt hết.
Tốt hết là cũng nhờ má đó. Nhờ, cho nên má biết ha, là cho như gia đình ai cũng thương hết. Má làm coi như tròn bổn phận người mẹ. Mà người bà ngoại cũng vậy. Má trong tâm biết nha. Má vui trong lòng vậy má. Má làm gì là tụi con quá có phước rồi. Tụi con được ngày hôm nay á là cũng nhờ người bà ngoại như vậy đó. Thương má lắm á. Hôn cái cho lì xì không? Hôn má cái cho lì xì không?
Cái gì?
Con hôn má cái má cho lì xì phải không? Hôn cái cho lì xì không? Hôn cái ha. Rồi cho lì xì không?
The reason why this video is so important to my family, the reason why it's so important to my mum, is because in the Asian culture, we lack expression, especially when it comes to love. And my mum watches this with so much regret because she rarely told her mum that she loved her. And the only time she experiences the words "I love you" to her mum was through her son. You know, I think this is why I'm so passionate about teaching this. My parents didn't tell me they loved me until I was about 28, 29. They didn't tell me they were proud of me until I was in my early 30s. Communication is so important. And the reason I tell you this, my friends, is the words "I love you," the words "I'm proud of you," it heals people. It's water that helps people grow. Thanks for letting me share this. It's lovely. Thank you.
It's always really difficult. You know, every time I teach and I watch that back, me sharing the story, I miss her so much. You know, I just know for a fact that all of the kindness in me, all of the love in me, and all of the compassion in me comes from that beautiful lady right there. I think I was a rotten child, you know, and she put the kindness, she put the love, she put the compassion in me. And I want you to know I'm okay. I see a lot of love coming through. I really appreciate all the love coming through. But I want you to know I'm okay. Because I believe that my grandmother lives on through her grandchildren, through me, through Fung, my cousin, through all of the grandchildren in the Giang family. I know that her love, her kindness, her compassion, she lives on. She's still here. She's a part of me. She'll forever be a part of me, and she'll forever be a part of my children. So, Grandma, you live on forever. Thank you for the love coming through. And I, you know, interesting note. Do you know what her nickname for me used to be? Two nicknames I used to get from Grandma in Vietnamese. The first one is Jo Thui, which literally translates to smelly dog. And second nickname she used to call me is she calls me Ki Ko, which means, weirdly, I'm a dried up monkey. So there you go. Thank you, Grandma. Thank you for bringing the wonderful kindness, love, compassion, savageness in your jokes, and bravery and courage in how you lived life. I love you forever. So please, I just want to respect the space after I speak about something rather vulnerable. Theatre coaches taught me this. I'm just going to wash the space and respect it. So just washing the space, respecting the space. I never learned how to be vulnerable until I came across the works of Brené Brown. And for the longest time in my life, I never shared stories like that. And as a result, I never had relationships where people would feel more bonding with me. I wondered why I didn't create more depth in my relationships, more trust, more empathy, more generosity. I couldn't understand why I wasn't achieving this in many of my relationships. And then until I came across the works of Brené Brown, I realized it's because I wasn't willing to be vulnerable. And when I shared stories that were vulnerable, I deepened my connections with the people around me. That's the power of oxytocin. We're going to switch gears a little bit. Right now, we're moving into the next one, which is very different because it's endorphins. And endorphins, this is very different to oxytocin. The bucket of stories for endorphins, it's stories that are more humorous, stories that are light in energy. And I don't mean stand-up comedy. Humorous and funny are two very different things. Okay? Humorous is a lightness in energy. So this is a story now that's going to evoke endorphins. And when you do invoke a story that causes people to release endorphins, it increases creativity. Next, it increases it increases rapport. It also makes people feel more present. And finally, it also makes people feel more relaxed. So when you release endorphins and you share a story that is more lighter, you share a story that's humorous in nature, then all of a sudden, increase in creativity, increase in rapport, it makes people more present, and it makes people feel more relaxed. And And I always love sharing this story too, because this woman in my life is also someone who's very important to me. So I hope you don't mind. I'm going to share with you a story that will release a little endorphins from you. I want to tell you how I met my wife. Goodness, I can see this bar so clearly. There's a bar in South Australia called Distill. I love that name, Distill. And there's a bottom floor, and then there's an upstairs section. The upstairs section was kind of like for the high rollers only, because you're going to pay a lot of money and buy lots of stuff. So we go up upstairs, and I crashed this girl named Vivian's, her graduation party. And I'm there with a group of my guy friends, and the bar was over there, and we were standing over here, and we were next to the toilet, and it kind of smelled a bit like piss. And we were thinking, look, we should move from this section because it smells, and they probably won't approach us. But then I see this beautiful Malaysian girl. She sits kind of standing by the bar by herself. I was like, I'm going to watch this, boys. I take a packet of cards out of my pants, right? And I walk over, like I'm strutting. I'm walking over there all confident. And the moment she looks at me, I kind of lose all my confidence. I go, God, you're beautiful. And then I just lost all my confidence. And then I said to her, look, would you be impressed if I transformed this King of Hearts into the Queen of Hearts like yourself? Don't judge me. Don't judge me. It's gross, but don't judge me. And I kid you not, she looks at me as if she'd smelt a fart. So she's like, and she says, I'd be more impressed if you transformed yourself into a real man and had a conversation with me. Boom! And I was like, oh my God, I've never had someone say something like that before. Usually they say, wow. And then she said that, and I was like, no, thank you. And I left. And I freaking left. And the guys laughed at me, they teased me. But I was so drawn to her. I was like, wow, what confidence, what courage. I'm so drawn to this. And then what I did was after that, I kept going back to Distill 4 times. Every week on a Friday, I went to Distill. And then she wasn't there, and then she was there. I thought, oh, this is great. So I saw her again, and I left my packet of cards behind. And I walked up to her. I said, hi, would you happen to be impressed if I transformed myself into a real man this evening and took you out for a coffee? And she said, yes. You know, about 5 years after that, I married her. And now we have a wonderful child together, and that's my wife. So thank you. That's endorphins. Very brilliant. Oh, thank you. You don't have to clap, but thank you. Oh, yeah, that's my wife. I love her to death. She still hates every single piece of magic that I show her. Story of my life. Seems I have savage women everywhere in my life. And when I bring her coffee in the morning, she always says, make sure your head is lower than mine. She exerts lots of dominance. Always, yes, honey, here you go. Love it. Love her. She's a savage and a little bit mean sometimes. Now, what we're going to do now is we're going to move into the 4th chemical. Now, I didn't say all these chemicals were wonderful because this final one is not. This one, well, excess levels of this final one is not. You need a little bit of this to grow, but excess levels of cortisol, not good for you. No, you don't want excess levels of cortisol. Now, you evoke cortisol in people when you use your instrument poorly, meaning you play your voice poorly, you use your body language poorly, when you don't use any of it, and when you've got poor storytelling structure. When you've got poor structure plus bad use of instrument, drives people crazy because it creates excess cortisol, which decreases creativity, 100%. Activity. What am I doing? Why does that look weird to me? Did I spell it wrong? No, that's right. Okay, next thing, it decreases. I've written it so many times, it just looks weird now. Next thing, it decreases memory retention. Memory retention makes people remember less. More than this, it decreases tolerance. And the last one, it increases something. I'm not going to tell you till I make you experience it. So I'm going to give you an example of cortisol. I'm going to tell you a story. I'll do it here live because I don't want any kind of visual footage of me doing anything that evokes cortisol. So I'll do it live for you all. So this is a story where I don't use my instrument and poor storytelling structure. I'll pretend it's a stage. I'll come on and we'll begin in 3, 2. The story of
I was making a decision if I was going to move to the US back in 2016. It was at the end of 2016, December, and it wasn't December. It was actually early October, and sorry, it wasn't early October. Sorry, it wasn't early October. It was actually mid-November. And mid-November in 2016, it was really difficult because I was making that move. My son was 2 months old, and we were about to move to America. It was a big, and my best friend, his name is Lenny, and Lenny and I, we go way back. Lenny and I, actually, funny story. Lenny and I, when we were young, we used to love playing marbles, and you're losing your mind, and I know it. I can sense it in my soul and in the chat. Lewis is like, make it stop, please. Please stop it. It's okay. Please don't be too mean, because that's how I used to communicate. But thank you. I love this, and I feel a little bit of pain all at the same time. So again, what that does is it evokes cortisol, right? So it makes you less creative. It decreases memory retention. It also makes you less tolerant. Many of you are not very tolerant, are you? So then the last thing it does, if excess levels of cortisol increases constipation. It's been proven. Excessive levels of cortisol increases the constipation, makes you less regular in life. So please, if you find yourself being less regular this week, apologies in advance. So please, let's ensure we help people move more frequently with their bowels by not causing any more cortisol than we already create in our own lives with stress. These are the four chemicals for storytelling. Trying to teach you storytelling in the most wholesome way possible. Now, the question you must ask is, okay, Vin, I get it. All right, we've experienced all of this. But Vin, you have to explain to me, why is this thing so important? Why is it so effective? Why? I'm going to ask a bold question here, and I'd like you to answer yes or no. So Dan, maybe let's get the thing ready. And the bold question I'm going to ask you is this. And please feel free to type no, it's okay. It's okay. I have feelings, but it's okay. I want the truth. How many of you here feel a strong sense of connection with me? Yes or no? It's okay, type the truth. Totally fine. Let's bring it up, Dan. Wow, it says half-half. That's interesting. Dan, I know, typed no. I can sense it. But this is great. Let's just say right now we're settling on, say, about 80%. I'll take that. High 70s. If you storytell with people, you can get 80% of people to feel more connected to you. You're never going to get 100% of people to feel connected to you, but 80%, overwhelming majority of people felt more connected to me, right? This is a very powerful thing. This is a very powerful thing, because now we have to question again. We have to sit and reflect. Why is it that with 80+% of people here that I've never met in person, they feel a strong sense of connection with me? Why? It's because I'm taking up space in your head. Storytelling is extremely sticky. It's extremely sticky. I'm going to just give a couple of questions here, okay? I'm going to give a couple of questions and see if you notice this. First question I'm going to ask you is, my grandmother, what age did she live up until? What age? Type it in the chat, please. Look at this. Look at this. Every single one of you wrote. Someone wrote 1,001. That's not right, but look at this. Everyone got 101. 99% of people, I would say this. 99% of people got this correct. I said my grandmother's age and how long she would live once. Okay, I said it once, and look at how many people remember it. I'm taking up space in your head, because effective storytelling, when you follow the right sequence, it takes up space in people's heads. I mean, you got it, look. My grandma did the radiation therapy. She did the chemotherapy. She was so sick when she did it. My grandma lived to 101.
Next, I had another question for you. The question I had for you is, and I again said this once, there was a bar that I met my wife at. The bar was called what? The bar was called what? Yes, look at the thing in the chat. Look at the chat for proof. And if you can see this, I said this once. I said it once. It was the name of a damn bar. Most people, when they meet people, they don't even remember their names. Yet somehow in this one, you remembered the name of the bar. You remember this because the storytelling sequence makes things sticky when you play your instrument and you use your body language. Because again,
I can see this bar so clearly. There's a bar in South Australia called Distill.
you got it again. Isn't this fascinating? More than this, I'll push you even further just to prove a point. I said I'll change what card into what card when I walked up to her with that brilliant pickup line. What card to what card? I said I'll change the what into what. Yes,
Would you be impressed if I transformed this King of Hearts into the Queen of Hearts like yourself?
Look at the number of people that got it. Isn't this unbelievable? Again, just to further push the point, sorry to kick a dead horse, but I'm going to kick it anyway. On day one, I shared with you a story. I compared myself a lot back then to a local magician. That magician in my neighborhood, his name was Magic What? You remembered. This was from day one. This was more than 48 hours ago. More than 48 hours ago. Look at the number of people who remember this. Again, when we meet people, they say their names to us. We don't even remember their names, and you're there in person. This is the power of storytelling. Because when you storytell more, what that does is it makes people feel more connected to you because you're taking up more space in their head. When you take up more space in their head, they feel a deeper sense of connection with you. What does that connection then allow? People always misunderstand, and they think communication skills, CS, they think communication skills immediately leads to more influence. They think it immediately goes to more influence. No, there's a step in between that they miss. When you get really good at your communication skills, it makes people first feel more connected. Once they feel more connected to you, only then do you have the wonderful privilege of being able to influence them. And if you don't learn storytelling and you learn all these different hacks about communication and you try to go to direct to influence, do you know what that feels like? It feels like manipulation. That's when people feel manipulated. So you may get the outcome, but they'll kind of go, oh, they'll walk away from that feeling really gross. That's why we won't learn storytelling. So not only do we get to deepen our relationships with the people we spend time with, to increase the amount of fulfillment and satisfaction we feel in life, but you can do it in the most authentic and beautiful way to allow yourself to arrive at more influence. Enough about proving the why as we follow Bernice McCarthy's method. Now, hopefully, the horses are all thirsty for the water. Now we must learn, well, how do we do this exactly, Vin? Let's deep dive and masterclass this. How do we storytell? I'm glad you asked, because you see, I learned storytelling as a keynote speaker from the perspective of a professional speaker, and I've done this to the highest levels in the world. I've also learned storytelling from a magician's perspective, and I've also learned storytelling from a content creation perspective, a videographer's perspective. I've learned it from 3 different worlds, and I've distilled the storytelling formula to something rather, I believe, simple. The storytelling formula is this. Step 1. Number 1. The first part of the formula is what's known as the incident. The incident. Now, when you're capturing the incident of the story, you need, first of all, 4 foundational ingredients. And the first 4 foundational ingredients are the who, what, where, and the when. Who, what, where, and when. These are the most basic ingredients you must have for your story, okay? Now, if you only had the most basic ingredients, and this is how the majority of people storytell, including myself about 10 years ago, if you only give the who, what, where, and when, you're not storytelling. If you only do that, you're doing what's known as reporting a story. So note this down. There's a difference between reporting a story and reliving a story. Great storytellers relive the story. Average storytellers report a story. If I was giving you an example of me reporting the story of how I met my wife, this is kind of how it comes across. If I report the story of how I met my wife, just a who, what, where, and when, it kind of happens like a news alert. It's dun, 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 dun. Ladies and gentlemen, last evening, Vin at Distill executed a terrible pickup line, tried to pick up the girl, failed at picking up the girl, left with his tail behind his legs, did not achieve a date that evening. On to the next story. Dan is still missing. We have not seen... Now, the thing that I want you to understand is that's reporting a story, and that's how we tend to report stories. We just kind of go who, what, where, when, that's the story. No. The next 2 ingredients that I'm going to give you, this is the difference between reporting a story versus reliving a story. So let's once and for all learn how to relive stories. Next 2 ingredients. Next one, this is how you relive it. It's called VAKS, V-A-K-S, which stands for visual, you've got auditory, you've got kinesthetic, and then you've also got smell for VAKS. V-A-K-S, VAKS. So if you think back to the story of how I met my wife, I added VAKS in there. I gave you visual descriptors. It's 2 floors, high rollers on the top, right? Visually, the big sign in front of me. And by me doing this and big sign, that's how I anchored the word distill in your head. Otherwise, if I just said distill versus big sign in front of me, it was so bright and it said distill, changes the way you remember things by changing the delivery. Next, auditory, loud music in the club, right? Next, kinesthetic, right? How I felt on the inside. That's what I mean by kinesthetic. So how you feel on the inside. Do you remember how I told you? I said, the moment she looked at me, oh, I lost all my confidence. I'm sharing with you a little about how I felt on the inside. And then smell. Do you remember the smell? The toilet smelled a bit like pee. An unusual thing to describe, but that makes things more sticky because it makes things more vivid. That's the power of VAX. You don't have to always add everything because not every story has a smell, okay? That's all right. These are suggested ingredients. This is here, what makes things more sticky in people's minds. This next one I learned from stand-up comedians. Again, having lived in the US, every time I would go to Chicago, I'd go to the famous comedy stores, same thing in New York, same thing in Los Angeles. I loved going to comedy stores because comedians, I believe, are the best storytellers in the world. And I watched this one common thing that all comedians did when they storytell. And this is one thing they all do. They bring the characters to life. And they do that with their body language and dialogue. They do it with body language and dialogue. They bring the characters to life. Can you see how that's the difference between reporting a story and reliving a story? Because when I was reliving the story, I played myself using movement with purpose. You now can see things you couldn't see before. And I walked up to my wife, and I literally walked up, and then I pulled the packet of cards out of my pants, and I said, and I literally brought myself to life with my body language and the dialogue. I said what I said at the time, and I said, would you be impressed if I transformed myself into a real man? That's reliving it in front of them. And what did I do? I stepped to the side to play my wife's character. I'd be more impressed if you transformed yourself into a real man. Used my voice in a higher pitch to bring her to life. Right? Otherwise, I didn't just say, and I said to her, would you be impressed? No, I showed you the nervousness feeling, facial expressions. Moved over to her. Otherwise, imagine I told the story as, would you be impressed if I did this? And then my wife looked at me and she said, no, I'll be more impressed if you transform into a real man. My wife does not sound like a man. I'm reliving it for you. And all of a sudden, you experienced the story instead of just hear the story. You have way more influence if people experience you as opposed to just hear the things you merely say. Now, these are the two things that genuinely add that life to the story. So your challenge later, I'm going to give you a little bit of time. I'm going to create a cooker pressure for you to apply the formula to your story. So you'll take your story and you'll put it into the formula. And you'll be challenged to create dialogue. And again, let's say in this practice moment, if you don't remember exactly what was said, you have creative freedom to play. So please, I'm giving you that creative freedom to play a little. All right? Bring your body language. If you're playing your child, then be a little smaller. Okay? Use a higher pitch. Have a bit of fun, right? Please don't make your child sound like a grown man, because that would be weird. So I'm going to ask you to get out of your comfort zone in a moment with this. Think about VAX. Before we dive into the practice, two problems occur. Two problems occur when people are setting up the incident. Number one, you take too long to set it up. You take too long. It's what I did during the cortisol section. I was telling a story how I moved to America, but then I was telling you, Lenny and I go way back and we loved playing. It's not relevant. I take too long to set up the incident. Right, so people take too long. Second problem, very big problem, the second one too. It's too short, right? It's too short. And this is my problem. I usually take too long. And then this is how I know my wife and I are perfect for each other, because she doesn't take long enough. She's too short. You should see my wife when we're out at dinner with new people and they inevitably ask, oh, tell us, how did you two meet? Do you know what my wife says? Oh, we met at a bar. And I'm there just going, we met at a bar. Damn it, let me tell the story. Right? That's all she says. She doesn't give enough ingredients. You're like, this is the most romantic story in the world. You just said, we met at a bar. Gosh, I'm not bar trash. Jeez. Anyway, not too long, not too short. Here's what's important here for you to realize. The optimal time to be able to tell a story as beginners is between 2 to 3 minutes max as a beginner. As a beginner, you've got 2 to 3 minutes before people start to go, okay, taking too long here. As a beginner, hold yourself to this standard. Between 2 to 3 minutes, the closer you are to 2, the better it is. Okay? Just, again, don't hold yourself to stand-up comedian standards. They can tell stories in approximately 30 seconds. This is our standard for now as we begin the 80-20 and the foundations. So once you've done this, once you've set the incident, while I was telling the story of moving to America, evoking cortisol, what were you all thinking? Far out, Vin, can you get to the what? In the chat, please. Can you get to the... Yes, thank you. Thank you, Jaden. Thank you for leaning in. Get to the point. That's step 2. Point of the story. What's the point of the story? Now, not every story has a point, but if you can craft a point for a story, it becomes that much more pleasing to people. And there's a wonderful book called The Compelling Communicator, which has done so much research on this next sentence I'm about to share with you. And the book is written by Tim Pollard, The Compelling Communicator. They've done thousands of hours of research, and they've identified that there's one sentence you say at the end of a story that makes people feel a sense of pleasure. And that sentence that you say is, you say, at the end of your story, you say, the reason I'm telling you this is because. And when you say the words, the reason I'm telling you this is because, people immediately go, yes, yes, this is brilliant. This is brilliant. Do you know why? Do you know why? Listen very carefully on this part before you take any further notes. Because when you say this, psychologically in people's brains, what you are communicating to them is you are about to turn information into insight. You're about to turn information into insight for them. And that's where their engagement peaks. And they go, oh, here's the insight for me. They get excited. Notice this happen to you as you experience storytelling from others in a moment. First 2 steps of storytelling. And we're gonna 80-20, we're gonna get good at this, all right? Don't make it more complicated. Don't worry about anything else for now. We just wanna get the foundation set. So what I want you to do now, we're going to pressure cook you. We're going to give you 4 minutes. And you don't have to break out, don't worry, you're staying all here. I want you to take the story that you've been preparing this week, which only should be 3 minutes long at most, remember? And I want you to put it into this formula. And I want you to make sure you've got all the ingredients. You've got the who, what, where, and when. Doesn't matter in what order. So who, what, where, when, it's up to you. Depending on the story and the context, the order might change. And then the thing that I want to challenge you on is make sure you've got VAX. Make sure you've also got bringing the characters to life in this. I want you to use your body language when you're telling the story. I want you to use your vocal qualities. I want you to have dialogue in the story. So then my son looked at me and said, Dad, why are you working all the time? One of my New Year resolutions is to not work as much. But again, start to bring some dialogue in. Do their voices, challenge yourself. And then at the end of your story, you have to say, even if you don't know what the point is, create one. This is not a TED Talk. I'm not asking you to do a TED Talk. This story of yours right now does not have to change the world, but I need it to change your ability to tell storytelling. You'd have to be able to improve it in this process. So at the end of your story, you can just say, and the reason I'm telling you this is because that's when I realized it's important to keep trying and not give up. That's it. Or you can just say, and the reason I'm telling you this story is because that's when I realized I had to look after myself first. Keep it super simple. And you can't get this wrong. You can't get this wrong because we're in the learning phase. You've got 4 minutes. Work on this skill. Most people neglect this. Don't delay it any further. The most influential people in this world have this ability mastered. Begin your journey right now. Lean in. We'll see you in 4. And now we're back. You see, I'm going to tell you all something that I know you're feeling. Right now, I know lots of people are feeling, oh no, Vin, no, I don't feel ready. I don't feel ready. I don't feel like I'm ready to do this. Let me give you a real big reality check. You are never ready for anything. I am never ready for anything. This is why we must always do things before we're ready. This is why the mastery process begins with what? Try and apply. And if I get to add one little note to the try and apply, it's always try and apply before you're ready, because you are never ready. That is just the reality of this particular skill that we're trying to learn. So please lean into the discomfort. And when you're doing it, if you're like, I don't even know if I'm doing it right, correct. That's how you should feel because you're learning the skill set. It's fine. I'm not asking you for a TED Talk. Now, Dan's going to leave a link in the chat. So in the chat, please, thank you, Dan. Please make sure every single person here has that link up. That link is going to have a 3-minute timer on the bottom of that page. And if you can't access that timer for any given reason, use a timer on your phone, okay? But I would like you to use that timer because it's already there. Now, when you get into your groups of about 4 or 5, we're going to go in reverse alphabetical order. So if you're on the bottom of the list, you go first. Now, before you start, you have to click the timer. Please, this is a very critical part of the process because if you don't click the timer, we're not going to be able to respect the time for other people. When you jump into the room, a quick wave to everyone, bottom of the list up, immediately we want that person to start. Get into the story right away. And the moment you hear the timer, very important, the moment you hear the timer, it doesn't matter where you are in your story, you immediately have to wrap it up by saying, the reason I'm telling you this story is because Vinh forced me to. End. That's fine. That is a turn. Next person begins. We don't want commentary between each person in their stories. We're practicing. This is a practice arena. We practice, we will come back and we will reflect. So please, let's protect each other's time. Once we're in our groups, immediately begin. And make sure you use the timer. Get out of your comfort zone. Bring the story to life. Do the characters. Stand up and tell the story. Play with the characters. We'll see you back here in just a moment. Welcome back, everyone. Good to see you here today. Claire, Adrian, hello, Carly, and I think that's one of your kids there in the corner. Hello, hello, Carly's baby. I mean, man. Yeah, boy. Not baby. Sorry. Good to see you there, mate. Great to see you, everyone. Welcome back. Welcome back. Now, as you're all making your way back in, remember, what's the most important thing to do after we've tried and applied something? What's the most important thing to do? Do you remember? You need to review and you need to reflect. You've got to review and you've got to reflect. So I want to give you all a moment to do something really important here. And again, just to iterate the reviewing and reflecting, because even if you just listened, even if you told the story, you're going to notice things now. Because when you're watching someone do it, you're like, oh, I saw them use the reason I'm telling you this is because. Or you'll notice that person just brought the characters to life. I love how that person did the voices. That person did the body language thing. When they're playing the bully, they look different. You'll start to notice everything. You go, oh, there's an archetype. Oh, there's melody. Oh, there's pause. I want you to just take a moment. What did you notice in your own storytelling? And just take whatever notes float to the top of your head right now. Let's just take a few moments to just reflect and review and take some notes. You're building the self-awareness muscle here. Let's build it. Let's make it stronger. 1.5 minutes. Review and reflect. Do not skip this. I love seeing so many faces, head down, taking notes. Samantha, I can see you there. Manuel, Gary, love seeing you lean into the process. Jill, wonderful to see you lean into the process. Atar, it's amazing when I see people actually applying this, because once you've tried something, there is a gold mine of knowledge to be mined after an experience. Most people after an experience just go to themselves, never want to look at that again. And they miss out on an entire treasure chest of self-awareness. So many of you started to call things out. Oh, far out. I need to pause more. Oh, far out. I didn't even look at people. Oh my goodness. I didn't even do any characters. I didn't do any voices. I wrote it down, but I didn't do any. This is so powerful because now you can plan and improve. Here's your homework tonight. Please do this. If you just thought, oh, I missed my turn to practice. Oh, I didn't get to practice. Oh, I wish we recorded it. Everyone tonight must record themselves telling the story that they just told today. You have to. Because when you record that video on your phone, that now becomes, Dan, what do we call it? When you record a video in that moment, it becomes a baseline. Thank you, Dan. It becomes a baseline that you now have forever that lives in your phone. You have a baseline on how you are on January 10th, 2024. And that baseline now is with you forever. So please make sure that you record yourself telling that story so in 2 years' time you can look back and go, wow, look how far I've come. Get that baseline video in. And you know what is even more powerful when you record yourself telling the story? This part of the process becomes infinitely more valuable. Because when you watch it back now, you can go, oh my goodness, I move way too much. Golden rule, if it distracts people from the message, it's a problem. I'm moving way too much. Oh my goodness, I'm not moving at all. All of a sudden now, you have upped your ability to review and reflect on all of your communication abilities. Please record the video. Do not skip this part of the process. Because as you review and reflect better, guess what? You enhance this. Guess what happens when you enhance this? You enhance this. And guess what happens when you do that? You get to mastery much faster than most. Leave you with a quote as we round out today. The quote I want to leave you with today is from Philip Pullman, who says, after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in this world. I love this. It's so true. Because as we have all of our basic needs met, what do we want? We want connection. We want to feel connected, whether it be connected with characters in a book, whether it may be connected with characters on a Netflix show. We all yearn for that connection. But let's not look for connection in movies and in shows with things that aren't even real. Let's look for connections that exist right here in reality. The people around us, the people we work with, the people in our family. Let's no longer put connection on the back burner, but instead this time at dinner, instead of saying, how's your day? Good. How's yours? Good. Tell a story. Tell the story that you've just done today and go, you know what? I did something crazy today. I told a story to complete strangers and I want to tell you about it, and watch what that does. Last question as asked for engagement in the chat. Last thing from me. In your groups, when you started sharing stories, yes or no, did you feel more connected to the people in your groups? Yes or no? Was there more connection? Dan, let's bring that thing up one more time, that circle thing around me. Look at the answers. It's 100%. It is undeniable that this ability makes us more connected to others. And the biggest regret people have when they die is, I wish I spent more time connecting with the people that I love. You are learning the most important skill set in this life. You did great. Well done. Dan, back to you.
Hello, everyone. So with that, we are past the halfway mark of the course. Can you believe it? Only 2 days to go. So as we close things out for today, I've just posted a link in the chat and a quick reminder as well. Please use Slido if you've got questions for Vinh. You can upvote, you can submit your own questions, and he will select the top 10 questions to answer. Now, when he answers them, he will answer the questions in a video, and we will post that in the same place where we're posting all of the session recordings. So if you've been looking for where he's been answering the questions, they're all in videos. You just need to scroll down the page. If you haven't gone to the page, it will be in my wrap-up email that I will send in about 4 to 5 hours time. We have to wait for the processing, all that sort of fun stuff. And I've also put notes on there. I've also put the exercise links for each day so that if you did want to use it, go back, do exercises, you can feel free to do so, all right? Now, all that being said and done, please do not forget, storytelling is a skill. So do not be afraid to practice it. And really, that's the only way we improve. So I'll end on a quote that I'm actually borrowing from Vinh. That is, knowledge is like paint. It does no good until it is applied. So you have the paint, the world is your canvas. It's time to start applying. So with all that being said and done, we look forward to seeing you back here tomorrow for day 4.
Can we give lots of love to Dan too? Because without Dan, I can't do this. I don't do very well without someone helping and supporting me behind the scenes. So can we please just give him lots of love in the chat? Because again, Dan has helped me level up the production, level up my ability to stay focused and teach. So lots of love for Dan, please. And that's enough. And that's enough, Dan. Shut it down. That's enough. That's way too much because that's way more than I got. That's it. Stop. Stop. His head's going to get massive. I'll bring you a neck brace tomorrow, Dan. Your head has grown massively. Bye, everyone. Take care.
All right. See you, everyone. Take care.